Ukrainians have taken up the fight and taught the world the meaning of bravery. Against the odds, they've snarled up Russia's invading army, inflicting defeat after defeat. The heroism of Ukraine has changed the geopolitics of Europe. Vladimir Putin has badly miscalculated, and I believe he knows it. But now that Putin's plan A has foundered, he's already escalating by intensifying his attacks on civilians. Maternity wards, schools and homes have been bombed without any regard for civilian life. Families are being starved out in freezing basement shelters and targeted as they flee. The United Kingdom and our allies in Nato and the G7 here today are clear. We will not stand by while Putin vents his fury on Ukraine. I've rarely seen our nations more united in recent years than we are now. Putin's failure in Ukraine is vital for the peace and prosperity of all of us, and his barbaric invasion has galvanized the international community into collective action. We will work with like-minded allies to ramp up lethal aid to Ukraine at scale, providing kit to President Zelensky in the quantity and with the quality that he needs to defend his country from its bullying neighbour. Today, I've announced that we in the UK will send an additional 6,000 missiles and provide £25 million in unrestricted funding for Ukraine's armed forces, more than doubling the lethal aid we've provided to date. We're bolstering our support for the NATO countries on the front line, sending a new deployment of UK troops to Bulgaria on top of doubling our troops both in Poland and in Estonia. This is just the beginning. We must support a free and democratic Ukraine in the long term. This is a fellow European democracy fighting a war of national defence. NATO and G7 leaders were also united today in our determination to continue turning the screws on the Kremlin's war machine, including by weaning ourselves off Russian oil and gas and reshaping global energy security. The UK has already hit over 1,000 Russian individuals and entities in our toughest ever sanctions, and the Foreign Secretary has announced 65 new sanctions against Russian banks, weapons manufacturers and oligarchs just this morning. To the humanitarian response with our allies and partners today, as we continue to see huge numbers of Ukrainians flee their homes. And the message that President Putin can take from today's extraordinary meeting of NATO and the G7 is this: Ukraine is not alone. We stand with the people of Kiev, of Mariupol, of Lviv and Donetsk. And as President Zelensky has said himself, the people of Ukraine will prevail, and Putin must fail, and he will fail. Thank you all very much, and I'm going to take a few questions from as many of you as I can.
Thanks, Prime Minister. The Kremlin has named you today as their public enemy number one, saying you're leading the kind of anti-Russian resistance internationally. I wondered why you thought that had happened, whether you thought we were going to get any blowback back home from that, and how you feel about it. And you just mentioned wind farms. Is the price of all this going to be sort of going back to having more onshore wind farms back home?
Okay, well, there's a couple of points there, Jason. First of all, I think it's very, very important for everybody to understand that I don't think there's a single person round the table in NATO or the G7 who is against Russians or the Russian people. Absolutely not. Least of all me. I think I'm probably the only Prime Minister in UK history to be called Boris. I have that distinction. And I'm not remotely anti-Russian, but I think what we all agree is that what Vladimir Putin is doing, the way he's leading Russia at the moment, is utterly catastrophic, that his invasion of Ukraine is inhuman and barbaric, and the conduct of that invasion is now moving into the type of behavior that, as I said before, we haven't seen in the continent of Europe for 80 years. It's horrific. So you can be sympathetic towards ordinary Russians who are being so badly led, but you can be deeply hostile to the decisions of Vladimir Putin, the way he's leading his country.